Thank you for tuning in once again to his Vine and Victory podcast. My name is Kurt Olson. I'm your host. It is a week before Christmas, and that is why my college student Olivia is with at one of my sides. Oldest son Sam, the other. Um, and I just wanted to take an opportunity just to talk a little bit about the election with them. Sam this was his second presidential election, the first for Liv, and just by way of just perspective, I guess. Votes have finally been counted in California,
Wow.
and it took much longer than it should have. Um, Final tallies, because yesterday, the electors met in state capitals across the country and cast the ballots from those states. It included our governor here in New York um, giving a speech about the need to abolish the Electoral College. Obviously, she wants left wing urban areas across the country determining the election rather than what we would traditionally call flyover country, like Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, and places in between. Um, but the final vote tallies, and this is according to Decision Desk HQ, which is a website I frequented during this election, and especially since Election Day. Um, President-elect Trump has got 77,289,764 votes, or 50.7% of the vote. Kamala Harris got 75,009,128. The total who voted was 152,298,892 Americans, and only God knows how many of them are fake. Because we know the election officials in those states don't where it happened, and it could happen in each of the 50, and we wouldn't know. Anyways, just a few questions for both of my children. Um, we will go ladies first.
That's fine. I was gonna say that anyway.
Fair enough. Um, and this is just generally about the election process, voting, things like that. So this is kind of this first question kind of like got two sides to it. What do you like, and what do you don't like?
I think the part I liked the most was just getting to vote, like finally being able to vote because like in school and throughout childhood, you hear like, oh, when you're 18, you can vote. And last year, there was a situation where I wasn't able to vote because of registration. But
Weirdness going on.
in
That's a
Ohio,
that's a very
where
separate
I
story.
go to school. But so I was finally able to vote and do the voting process, which was really cool. And I felt like an American. I felt like
Fair enough.
I'm an American. I think the part that I didn't like was just like all the drama around the election and like there were people, illegal immigrants, like voting and like stealing
Right.
people's identity.
Yep.
I heard about that.
Yep.
Ballots being like burned or like
Yep.
missing.
That. Yep.
Just like all the drama surrounding it. And even like on election day, because I was at Cedarville, I would like talk to people and they didn't want to really talk about it. Like, so I was just keeping up with it myself, but I didn't really have anybody. I had a few friends that I talked to the election about, but nobody really wanted to talk about it because I have a lot of friends at Cedarville that don't like politics. They
Right.
don't want to be political. So
Yeah.
I guess that was probably
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
part that I didn't
Yeah.
really enjoy.
I mean, and part of this is just our culture is just very divided right now, even within the church,
Yeah.
on politics. And let me just say this. Politics obviously is a dirty word in our culture because of the shenanigans. We're taping this on an afternoon in which a 1,547 page omnibus spending bill has been dropped before members of Congress. And they're being bribed and extorted. You can't go to your homes and spend Christmas with your families until such and such happens. And that's just one of the reasons politics has a bad name. However, I would remind everybody, whether you like politics or not, politics is going to like you because there's going to be something these people pass that bites you in the backside. Period.
Yeah.
It is that simple.
Mhm.
That's what government does. So whether you like politics or you don't like politics, you better start paying attention because policy affects people.
Mhm.
Period. So with Liv's response on that, Sam, same thing to you. That two-parter. What do you like about voting, and what don't you like?
Kind of similar to Liv. I like the fact that you're being able to participate in the electoral process. Millions of people before you have done it, and it's kind of cool to be able to put your mark on there too. But an extension of that, it's also cool to just express your voice. I didn't vote for either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. And so it was really cool to kind of stand out even in that direction and say,
Right.
I think both of them are garbage, and I don't see any of them doing any good for us. So um, the negative, I think it's a lot of the drama. It's the bashing people. It's
The
the
campaign advertisements.
Right.
They
Okay.
just spreading of lies or misinformation about the individuals, or
Right.
just not good all around. So
So what I'm hearing you guys say without saying it is we should have more humor injected into our political commercials. Creativity
Yeah.
in
I
terms
just
of
wish it wasn't like even not just like the presidential, but even like, okay, so I go to school in Ohio, and they were getting a new senator, and it was Sherrod Brown and Bernie Moreno,
right,
and a lot of it was on abortion
Right.
because that's been a huge
Right.
topic in Ohio, and they would do these Bernie Moreno commercials, and they'd be like, Bernie Moreno doesn't care about a woman's right, and yada yada yada, and they would take things out of context and twist it. And then for Sherrod Brown,
yeah,
or they would have like women who did not support Bernie Moreno watching videos of him talking, and they would just be like, oh, and they would like make these like
Yeah.
gasping sounds
Yeah.
of just like utter disgust. Like, why do we have to put that in? Because everybody has a different opinion of a person, but I never really saw that for Sherrod Brown. I always saw like he's gonna make Ohio greater, and it's just like that. Like, we don't need to like be bashing people directly,
right.
or like
It-
them on as a person. Like, we're bashing their personality
See-
or whatever, not their policy.
See, I've always thought that we need quality injection of humor in political commercials. And that's just a me
Or
thing.
like the weird Kamala Harris one about being a man. It was just like, this is what a man is, but it was not.
Yeah.
it was
It-
fake.
it was-
effeminate men trying to act.
Right.
certain
And
way.
we get this today. These people are catering, pandering to certain groups of people, so they got to dress up in hunting camo and other things
or
to
whatever.
prove their
Yeah.
bona or,
I
or
mean,
whatever.
I saw commercials for Kamala. I was a U.S. Army veteran, and I'm voting for Kamala. I'm like, you really think that she's gonna be that great for this country? Really, deep
Like,
down.
But I think the
But
part
that's
that
beside
I
the
don't like
point.
about the campaigns is when they're like bashing the person directly.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to win people's votes. But I personally feel like that's not really helping. Like when Kamala Harris has videos of Donald Trump being misconstrued, or Donald Trump has videos of Kamala Harris being misconstrued, it's just kind of like, it's not really, it's only fueling the fire more.
Yeah.
And causing more tension. And then
Yeah.
when they speak during the debates, they're like little kids, and they're like
Yeah.
picking on each other.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump to the question about candidate quality
Yeah.
before I get to something else. Do you like the candidate quality that is being produced in this country? Liv.
I mean, yes and no. For Donald Trump, I think sometimes his ego was like, he was very egotistical, and he's been that way. I feel like he's known as like an ego guy
Trump is Trump
since like The Apprentice and all that stuff.
Right.
So like, he just has a very big ego. But Kamala Harris, I feel like her personality was like, I'm trying to tug at your heartstrings. Like, anytime I would hear her speak, she always brought in the emotion and the feeling, and like, when I was a kid growing up in a middle class family, and she was trying to pull at your heartstrings, but it was just kind of weird.
Yeah, it's more of a emotionally driven rather than appealing to your thinking.
And for me, I really, especially this being my first election getting to vote in, and I didn't really know what I was doing, I wanted to hear both of them. I kind of already knew when it was down to Donald Trump and Kamala Harris who I was going to be voting for.
Right.
But I wanted to focus on like their policy and like what they were going to do to make the country better. And I was obviously leaning one way, but Kamala Harris had a huge emphasis. Almost her entire campaign was focused on reproductive rights.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And as many of you know, I attended the March for Life back in October, and that was an eye-opening experience for me, seeing people coming together to celebrate life, but also seeing the other side of people who just, they don't value life at all, and they think of it as like a come and go type thing. It doesn't really matter. I knew that Donald Trump wasn't completely pro-life, but he had at least, I think it was a 16-week ban on abortions.
Something
and he
like
was
that.
against late-term abortions. I feel like that's a place to start. Like, let's recognize that late-term abortion is wrong. If you can't determine that a baby is a baby at conception, at least let's come to like an agreement and know that killing a baby up until birth is wrong. And so he definitely had that stance. And also hearing from J.D. Vance, him being not only a Christian, but I learned he was from Ohio. So when I went to the March for Life, there was a lot of people that were talking about J.D. Vance, and he was very much pro-life. So I feel like that was something that was very important to me, because I don't believe in those reproductive rights for women. So I think that I was focused more on their policy and like what they were going to do to make the country better, more than their personality. Because to be honest, either one of them wasn't my favorite. Like, I wouldn't just pick those two and be like, yeah, I'm going to vote for so-and-so over so-and-so.
Candidate quality. Sam?
I think the candidate qualities for both people, for both parties, are just terrible. I think it's one thing to talk about policies, even though for both of them, Kamala Harris I completely disagreed with. There's a couple of things about Donald Trump's policies that I actually agree with, but for the most part, there wasn't a lot there. For me, I care about policies and the ideologies that come along with their policies, but I also care a lot about character. As I said, my favorite president is George Washington, and he was known for his character, not just his policies that helped frame the country, but his character is really what pushed him over the edges. Being a president who was technically elected for 3 terms, even though he declined the third one. Um, it just shows that this candidate actually believes in what they are saying and not faking the American people out.
Right. Right.
Because I believe Donald Trump is a populist. It's more egotistical than anything. But yeah, I mean, I think the person that should have been president, I mean, we kind of skipped over just because his name's not Donald Trump. Even though
Okay.
policy wise, very similar in dealing with the border and
Right.
militarily and all
Right.
this other
Right.
stuff.
And,
But
I mean, and this was a very unique election, even in terms of political history,
mhm,
because we had an assassination attempt on Trump in July. What was it? 2 months later, the golf course and the guy getting caught, and we had the Democrat running as an incumbent, seeking reelection, pulled from the party in July. I mean, there were so
mhm.
many things that were unique to this election that we probably will never ever see again. Although, if the Democrats don't like a candidate, they now have the precedent set. I mean, they can do whatever the stink they want.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling their party has not really dealt with that at all.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I think hurt Kamala Harris. She had to introduce herself to the American people. Vice presidents don't get a lot of attention.
Mm.
They don't.
Unless they get a lot of attention, like the president's giving them tasks to be involved
Yes.
in, they don't get a lot.
And the attention she was getting tended to be negative
Mhm.
because they were talking about replacing her even in March. And here she was just 5 months later. Boom, done, nominated.
And that was another thing that was shocking to me because in the 4 years that she ran as VP to Joe Biden, she didn't do anything substantial. She didn't, so like when people would be asked like, "Oh, who are you voting for?" and they'd be like, "Kamala Harris," be like, "What has she done?" And they said nothing.
And she even admitted, I believe it was on The View of all places, when she was asked, or it was some interview, and I'm thinking it was The View. That just kind of comes to mind. Is there, the past 4 years, is there anything you would have done different? And she came up dry. The person who asked the question even gave her a chance to kind of do a mea culpa and well, no, I would have done X and Y and Z and A and B and C.
Or I saw an interview where she sat down with someone because she didn't do a lot of one-to-one.
No.
No, she didn't.
But when she would, and she didn't really prepare herself, they asked her like, "What makes you stand out more than Joe Biden?" And she didn't
Right.
really have an answer.
Right.
So it's kind of
Exactly.
like,
And so when the Democrats pulled this little dog and pony show in July, we can call it not the midnight massacre, the midday massacre, because by early afternoon on a Sunday, what was it, July 21st or something like that? We're hearing Joe's done, and 20 minutes later he's endorsing Kamala Harris. I don't think the Democrats were expecting that. I think that threw off Obama, Pelosi, and the others that were involved in that, because I think they wanted to do kind of like a mini primary, throw a bunch of other names out there, and whoever won was going to be the person, the candidate. But that person would have faced the same challenge, introducing themselves to the American people in a very, very short window. So they really didn't do themselves a lot of favors. Anyways, all of that. Let's get. I'm assuming the Cedarville University response to the election was probably positive. A Christian
Yes.
college in Southwest Ohio, a state that went for Trump,
yes.
and went for Trump by a large margin.
And it's a big farming area where Cedarville is too.
We,
so
Yeah.
The day after the election, our president, Dr. Thomas White, we have chapel every day, which is basically like a huge worship service, and we have a speaker that comes in and preaches from the Bible. But and that's basically like a huge gathering place for all the Cedarville students. And he said, I'm sure most of you are feeling pretty good about this election. And I heard a lot of people saying, yeah, and even I felt better, like not super like, oh, like everything's gonna be great, but like more secure, I guess.
Right.
Just because Donald Trump, I do believe, is gonna fix some things that happened in
Right.
the last 4 years that he said he doesn't want to have continuing. But yeah, there was definitely a very positive response. Lots of Trump fans on campus. So
Okay. All right. And with the two of you being Gen Z, just last couple questions here kind of focus on kind of the future. And what's your views on the state of our nation
like
currently 2024, as we're what 2 years away from a 250th birthday party?
I think something that we need to take into account, and this is something that I learned in some of my Bible classes at Cedarville this year, is like our government is nowhere near as bad as like the government during like Paul's day and age. And it is crumbling because we've got a lot of culture issues, and we need God back in this country big time, and we need people that are willing to stand up and boldly express their beliefs and not get criticized and marginalized. And like, I know there are some people who are big name celebrities or like entertainers that have stood up for what they believe, and they're put on blacklists.
Right.
Like, you can't work with this person because they're too difficult to work with. And I was watching an interview there's a woman named Alexa Penavega. She was big name actress, and she was talking to Lila Rose.
Right.
And she was talking about how our culture we need a culture shift, and we need families back into we need the nuclear family back.
Yeah.
We've got a huge problem with just that. But I think like as a Gen Zer, I'm really nervous for the alphas, the Gen Alphas, because I see them, the way they handle things is not great. They're very emotional. They're very, as a future teacher, like these are the kids I'm going to be potentially dealing with in the generation after that. But they handle everything through their phone.
Yeah.
They don't know how to talk to people. Mm-hmm. It worries me. They want to be grown up. You've got like 10-year-olds that don't want to be 10. They want to be 18. They want to be 20. They don't understand what being a kid is like. I mean, like
time goes along fast enough. You don't need to wish it away.
I mean, I think of myself as a 10-year-old, and the things that 10-year-olds are getting into nowadays are so different. I was a kid. I was 10 playing with baby dolls, and like I was still a kid. And now you got all these kids that are like, they want the brand new iPhone. They need all this stuff. Like
Is it a sense of entitlement?
Very much so. Or the way that they talk to each other. Like the way kids talk to each other is just so hateful. And the way they talk to their parents, the way they talk to teachers, anybody in authority over them is, you have no power over me.
Is social media breeding that?
100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
These kids are getting on social media younger and younger, and they're getting all this teen slang. They're watching people who are influencing them in different ways.
Right.
The parents aren't parenting their kids. I think
that's a big one.
I think that we need to like focus on that, because these are the future generation. I mean, we're the future generation. We got a whole other generation, and then a generation after that coming up, and they're really failing even more than Gen Zers.
Right.
And if we don't do something now, it's only going to get worse. And I just don't think those kids have strong role models in their life that are disciplining them, and it's causing a whole suite of issues. And then you have you have just a whole identity crisis, between gender, between who I am as a person. And I think that's something that we all struggle with as we grow up. Is like, who am I? Like, who am I as a person? Who am I, future career? Like, what
Right.
do I want to do with my life?
Yep.
But this is becoming a bigger issue of, oh, I got to change myself because I feel this way. Then I got to go do this. And I got to, it's just, kids should not be worried about their gender or their identity at such a young age. It's not appropriate. It's not necessary because kids say things.
Right.
They change their minds. That really worries me as a teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
And I cannot look at a child and tell them that they can just change whoever they are, because they can't. They can try as much as they can, but God created them how they were meant to be for a reason. And changing that is just taking God's creation and just saying, well, I'm God, I can just change it.
Yeah.
And that's not good. So I think we definitely have a huge culture problem in this country, and we don't have enough people standing up and being like, this is wrong. Or if they do, they're getting extreme backlash and
Right.
they're being silenced
Right.
and told, like, you can't say that, you can't do that. You're not, you're
Yeah.
going to miss all these opportunities because of what you believe or who you are.
So, are you optimistic about the future, or?
I have mixed, I guess, yeah, like, I have a mixed opinion because I do think, like I said before, I do think Donald Trump is going to try to change the trajectory of the country a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's going to make everything perfect, because there's no such thing as perfect. But I do believe that he's going to put more order into this country. He's going to try to make peace with some of the other nations that we've kind of been struggling with, and
Right.
he's going to make the border tighter, because that's something that he's always been very vocal about. He's going to kind of stop he's going to put a bit more limits on abortion, and there's also some stuff with, like, the gender issue. So I do feel optimistic, but I'm not going to put my security in the country,
Right.
because it's just, our security should be in Christ.
Right.
And ultimately, he's the one that's going to make his plan be
All right.
fulfilled in this country.
All right. So these last two questions to Sam here. Your thoughts on the current state of the nation, and what level of optimism do you have?
Yeah. I think that there are some good things. I think this election kind of showed a lot about people are really done with a lot of the woke nonsense that
Okay.
the left tends to be pushing.
Yep.
I think the gender stuff, I think the focus on race and sexual identity and all the stuff with kids, I think that's a big positive thing. And I think it's a step in the right direction. But at the same time, even though it seems like conservatism, which tends to lean more towards biblical values, is popular, I still don't think it's rooted in Christianity.
Right.
I still think it's rooted in something else.
Right.
Where there's a lot, to go back to the Founding Fathers, I mean, a lot of them may have not been Christian in the sense of they believe in Jesus Christ, attend church, read their
Right.
Bible, stuff like that.
Right.
But they had a massive respect for the morality that comes from it. And even if they weren't a Christian, they would argue that there is a God who
Right.
is involved to some semi sort of degree.
Right.
Humanity failed.
Just a lot of everything was based on Christian morals.
Yeah. And so we don't have that kind of level. It's still very much of this, conservative ideas, yes, but it's still this rejection of God and
you're saying it's not tethered to a solid foundation.
Exactly.
It's all individualistic.
Yeah. And I think so. Again, I think that there's good benefits. I feel like, you're probably going to see a little bit more shifts with more conservative ideas, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, but is it attached to actual truth or something else? And
right.
I mean, the Founding Fathers had a really good approach to bringing the Bible and some of the Enlightenment philosophy and ideas that came from it, and putting together this nation and this government. And right now, you have one side of the aisle who's trying to take one of those pillars away, and that's God. So
I also was just gonna say that I wish that we could just like enjoy things like movies, music without it being political. I feel like
that's a
Yeah.
good
And
one.
even sports.
Yeah, sports.
I feel like nowadays everything is just like political. Like there's always a
Yeah.
political agenda related
Yep.
to something when maybe it was just someone trying to make something
cool or fun
creative
or,
and different.
Mhm.
Like musicians should stay out of politics. And they can have their beliefs, but it should not be, I'm thinking of Taylor Swift. It
Right.
should not be like she's this political figure because she's not.
Yeah.
or LeBron James and the
Yeah,
NBA.
like they
Right.
can have
Yeah.
the people that they voted for, and they can say like, oh yeah, I'm gonna vote for so and so, but it doesn't need to be like all that they're surrounded around, and then the headlines are based on their
Yeah.
political stance or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like that, and it bothers me because as someone who likes music and movies, and I can't enjoy a movie because it might have a political agenda attached to it, or
Right.
it's just like,
Yeah.
what is like feeding my soul? Like, how is this benefiting me?
Yeah.
It just like, it's just sad that we think that way.
Yeah. And all of this comes as some people in the sports media are lamenting the viewership loss with the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, even with the WNBA, they're losing stuff as well.
Yeah. So
Even with more
Yeah.
conservative minded.
note to you entertainers, whether you are in sports, movies, TV, or music, no one wants your politics.
It just isn't necessary. Like, okay, perfect example, the Barbie movie. I haven't seen it, and I haven't listened to like the director and like but everything about it was political. And I had friends, like I grew up playing with Barbies as a little
Yeah.
girl. It's like
Yeah.
like a common toy that girls play with, and
Yeah.
something that's very nostalgic for us. And I was like, oh, I want to watch it just because of the nostalgia of
Yeah.
playing with Barbies. But it was all political about women being in this power, and I could see that in some of the things that I like saw from the movie. But then I had friends saying it's just a fun movie about Barbie, and like, don't take it as this political thing. But like, why do we have to put that into account with something? Unless it was intended to be that way, why do we have
Yeah.
to add that factor into the narrative?
There's always an agenda somewhere that is hiding beneath the surface,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to be attentive to that because they're trying to steer you a certain way.
Well, this is something I talked about when we talked about at Cedarville. This tends to be a lot. When you look at movies that talk about good and evil, they're going to be naturally more conservative because good and evil is conservatism is based off of religion.
Good guys taking out bad guys at the end.
This political correctness stuff that's seeping into movies is a way to say, oh no, that's good and evil, that's not there, when naturally it is going to be more conservative because it's good and evil. There's a battle there, and it's just going to naturally swing to there's a moral high ground and there isn't.
Right. And all of this comes as we are a week from Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, the one person in recorded history who literally changed history by himself. Okay, yeah, he had 12 disciples. There was even a group past the 12 disciples, and even a bigger group behind that.
God in the flesh.
I mean, none of that would have happened if Jesus didn't come.
Exactly.
Exactly. And there's so much.
The 12 disciples wouldn't have known each other other than the brothers.
Yep.
And
they would have known each other as just a bunch of
random dudes walking across the street.
Yeah, random dudes who happen to also be Jewish.
Yeah, that's. I mean, and that was.
Oh yeah. I saw you fishing the other day. How'd that go?
because there were also different social classes. I mean, you had
Yeah.
Matthew was a tax collector,
Yep.
was hated,
Got
and
a
then you
tax
had
collector.
more common people were fishermen and
Yeah.
all the other things.
Shepherds.
And of course,
Shepherds
and of course, even the gospel writers, you have a doctor, Dr. Luke,
and Luke.
and that would be an upper class kind of person
I mean,
as well, as
Paul.
opposed to John and Mark, who were more connected to
Jesus.
Christ.
I mean, you have Paul, who's a
and Matthew.
top Jewish leader.
Yeah, and
you know,
and Paul was always regarded as someone, no matter what he was going to do, he was going to make his mark on
Yeah.
history. And okay, yeah, he was killing Christians early on.
and nothing changed.
Then the road to Damascus happens, and
And just his like boldness and his like ferventness of like, I could die, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't
Like,
care.
To live is Christ, to die is gain. Here it
Yeah.
said in Philippians,
yeah,
his power, his like joy in prison as
Yeah.
he's like on death row and just like waiting, like, okay, it could be any day now, but he's
Yeah.
writing letter to these churches and saying
Yeah.
like, continue on, like, hold on, like, run the race with endurance set before you, don't
Which-
give up.
which wanders into some weird territory, which is a totally different episode.
Yeah.
What kind of a letter would Paul write to the American church?
The Cliff Note version is it's not a very friendly one.
Yeah, it's not a very friendly one.
It would be like his letter to like the Philippians,
Or it'd be a
or
split letter
the
where the bad
Colossians.
churches get this and the good churches get a different letter.
Yeah,
But even
one of
still,
those. yeah.
there's
I mean,
still things to
and
work
this comes at a day and time in the Christmas season when I've seen mega churches doing things with the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, Die Hard of all things.
Which Die
Um,
Hard in the Bible should never be put together.
on. Other than,
Even as someone who likes Die Hard, even I agree with that.
the only
Uh,
thing that I would say is good and evil, but
That's where it ends.
That-
But
that's
again,
it.
Die
That's
Hard in the Bible
Jesus
should
did
never
not
be put
shoot
together.
people and swear.
So so I don't know what's going on at some of our mega churches, but seriously, you people,
They're trying to be
I-
trendy. That's
they're
what
they're trying to be trendy and cool and appeal visually. You should have seen. I saw a video. I don't know what this mega church was doing. It looked like kind of a Christmas pageant kind of thing.
Okay.
They had dancers on stage, and of course it's a
Oh.
mega church, so the church the stage is really big, and they were doing a version of For King and Country's Little Drummer Boy. The drummers were suspended from air, and I'm like,
That's
and it was like a serious Martin Garrix laser light show minus the seizure that you would have at his.
and the EDM music just
Yeah,
going on.
exactly. Yeah, and everybody just bouncing in the
Yeah. It's a rave.
Let's just remember that churches are a place of worship.
Yes.
It's
I-
God's house,
I-
not a dance party.
I can't
I'm not
imagine.
saying we can't have fun in churches, but like,
I mean, and churches have been venues for concerts.
Oh, for
many
sure.
many times.
yeah, but that's different when you have like Stephen Chris Chapman doing
Playing
a
at a
concert
church.
versus
It's
or
It's
for King
Sunday
and Country.
morning.
because
Yeah.
they're still going to emphasize worship rather than just entertainment.
right.
Yeah.
Churches
A lot of
need
that
to
stuff
be-
is just for the entertainment and cool factor.
Some people-
not because it's actually needed.
Some people are literally losing their minds, and
Let's just,
you're
let's
kind of
just
like,
remember
what's
that
going on?
we don't need to add to scripture. It's very dangerous to do that. So saying that
That's
the
called
Grinch,
heresy.
saying that the Grinch was at the original Christmas story scene where Jesus was born is false.
Or what they're doing is they're taking Dr. Seuss's Grinch Who Stole Christmas or one of these movies, and they're using it as a metaphor to make some kind of case.
Or
And it-
point. Or
Again,
whatever,
we don't
yeah.
add to the Bible because it's dangerous.
That's
and
called
as
heresy.
as
That
as
is-
Dad would say, stick with what brought you
To the dance.
That is literally
and
called
keep
heresy.
it
It's
scriptural.
called heresy.
like read the original context in which these stories and actual historical events were written and don't add to them.
There's a reason
It's not
why
needed.
Mormons are a cult because they added to the Bible.
and with all of that,
Sorry
for
for any
and
Mormons,
with
but-
with all of that, don't know when I'll be taping Christmas week. I got a couple days off. Can't imagine I'm going to be taping on Christmas Day. I'll drop it
no.
at some point. But so people are probably going to be having their Christmas before my next episode. So we certainly would wish Merry Christmas, Happy New Year
Yep.
to everyone that watches this, and certainly seeking a growing audience and some new
And
platforms.
thank you to all of you who support my father.
Yes.
I know this is something that he's been trying to do for a while. It's a creative avenue for him. So thank you. And hopefully one day this will be bigger so that you can, make this into more of a
I'm already
full-time
thinking
thing.
of doing some things a little different next year. Looking to do a few more interviews, not just with my kids. So that's going to be hopefully more of a thing next year rather than me just identifying a few issues. I realize some people would probably love to know what I think about drones and a few other things right now. It's going to have to wait, people. Sorry. So until next time, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And God bless and goodbye.
Peace.